One of the biggest problems we have in the liberty movement is that we trust wolves in sheep's clothing. If somebody says that they support the Constitution, they say words like limited government, or they quote a founding father, all of a sudden we just swoon all over them without looking at the record. And this leads us to trusting bad people, hoping that they're going to do the right thing. We have a strong addiction to what's called hopium, where we're just hoping that somebody will do what they say, and we don't do our due diligence in finding out the background, finding out the record. And so back in was it April of this year, 2021, I gave a presentation, the extended edition of Utah's Secret Combinations, where we talk about a lot of the background of how the international conspiracy worked its way into Utah. And as a part of that, we named names, and a couple of those names we have are Jon Huntsman Jr. as well as Senator Mike Lee. And so that's why this kind of the rest of the video kind of just gets right into the presentation, because this isn't the full version of the presentation. The full version of the presentation we have reserved as a thank you for those that are subscribing to this YouTube channel or are members of defendingutah.org. So if you like what we do, if you want to make sure you don't miss any of our videos, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and that bell to make sure you get notifications. If you want to see the full version of the video, I encourage you to either subscribe to this YouTube channel or go and become a member of Defending Utah at defendingutah.org, which also has a ton of other benefits in addition to being a part of the community that is working to be able to go on the offense to restore lost liberty. So with that, the presentation.
Now we go to the Council on Foreign Relations, another branch of the conspiracy, another kind of tentacle of this Hydra monster. And their goal, they say, is to maintain and gradually increase the authority of the United Nations. And they're still building the New World Order. They had an article just a few years ago called World Order 2.0. And its co-founder, right, again, is Colonel Edward Mandell House, who wanted communism as dreamed of by Karl Marx. So we have the Council on Foreign Relations. And they created a few years after it was formed. So, well, the Council on Foreign Relations, let me just kind of back up a little bit, why it was formed. You have the Council on Foreign Relations, right? We have World War I. And the purpose of World War I, because right afterwards it was to make the world safe for democracy, as if we wanted that. And it was to, at the end of it, they wanted to start to build world government. And so they introduced this idea of the League of Nations to build us towards a world government. But the American people, thanks to good people like J. Reuben Clark Jr., and to warn the people about the dangers of the League of Nations, and the American people said no, and the League of Nations was stopped. And so people like Colonel Edward Mandell House and others of his ilk that wanted to build this New World Order, they got together and they formed the Council on Foreign Relations to help make the American people start to accept the idea of a one world government, which leads us to World War II and the formation of the United Nations. And so as a part of their tools to get this accomplished, they form another subgroup called the American Committees on Foreign Relations. And if you go to their website, it talks about their history and how they were formed in 1938 by the Council on Foreign Relations for the purpose of bringing business and professional local leaders together to discuss world events due to isolationist attitudes and emerging international conflicts. So because we dared to support American independence in the Constitution, they had to start these local groups to be able to help opinion motors, business interests, to be able to use their influence to get the local people to support this idea of world government. And so we look at their map of where their organizations are, and they've got different clubs all across the country, and they've got one right here in Salt Lake. And in fact, this is their website. You can go there, Salt Lake CFR, slcfr.org. And they have events every single month. And what's interesting about this is they, every single month, their event is held downtown at the Alta Club. And so you have the Alta Club being this funnel where everything is used from the international conspiracy to get their programs done throughout the state. Now, we have just a couple of examples of prominent Utahns who have been CFR members in the past, not current CFR members, but they've been members in the past. We have former Governor Jon Huntsman Jr. and Garrett Gong. And so we've got an article on the new at defendingutah.org about Jon Huntsman and the New World Order. So if you want to read more about that, more documentation about what I'm going to cover right now about Jon Huntsman, you go to that and you'll learn about that. But I want to give some background about him. So in 1993, he joined the Council on Formulations, and then he leads Envision Utah, which is the leading Agenda 21 organization in Utah. 2007, he supports cap and trade, which is freedom destroying, and it's the Green New Deal type stuff. Then you have 2007, the same year, he backs the forced healthcare mandates, leading us towards Obamacare. He backed the $1 trillion bank bailouts in 2008, supports forcing states to recognize sodomite marriage. 2012, he attended the Bilderberg Conference, joins the Atlantic Council, which is a branch of the Council on Foreign Relations, in 2015, and then he endorsed Mike Lee for U.S. Senate that same year. And in 2019, he also was revealed to be in Jeffrey Epstein's Little Black Book. So here's a screenshot of the article we have. You can read more about that on our website. So he endorsed Mike Lee. Let's get into Mike Lee, some key jobs that he's had since he graduated law school in 1997. He immediately went to clerk for the U.S. District Court. And then just a year later, he clerked in the Supreme Court and did that for many years. And then he went to serve for legal counsel, worked for Jon Huntsman. And then he went back to the Supreme Court a year later. And then he, after just doing that for a year, then he got hired by Energy Solutions. And then the next job after that was being elected to the U.S. Senate. Okay?
And he's an House Club member?
Correct. So kind of go with the record. So we have here Orrin Hatch and Mike Lee. They're throwing a fundraiser for Mitch McConnell. So teamed up with Orrin Hatch to these very much neocon internationalists. The Tribune again reports, no surprise that Lee has trouble with Utah Republican. So here we're starting, the Tribune is starting this campaign to try and make people think it's this complete professional wrestling where they're getting the grassroots conservatives to think that Mike Lee is getting serious support from establishment liberal Republicans, saying that he's getting in trouble with Utah's Republican establishment, and it's long been rumored that he'll face an intra-party challenge when he seeks re-election. Okay? So, oh man, there's no doubt about it. He's going to get opposition, and it's going to be, the establishment's going to be going after him all the way. And then next year, he says Mike has a very good intention. This is Jon Huntsman Jr. Mike has very good intentions, and I say that because I worked with Mike. In fact, I don't know too many people in the legislative branch who are as brilliant as Mike. So he's getting, again, this endorsement from Jon Huntsman Jr. Then we look at some of his record. He filed to get signatures, right? So he's giving legitimacy to count my vote and destroying the neighborhood caucus, even though he had zero chance of losing at the convention. And literally nobody in the Republican Party ended up actually any legitimate opposition in the primary at all. He sailed right into the nomination. There was zero opposition to him on the Republican side, even though the media wanted to make it look like, make the grassroots Republicans think that he was getting opposition from the insiders, okay? So there was no opposition, but surely the establishment hates Mike Lee is the line that we're supposed to think. So surely the Democrats are going to come up with a top-notch, hard-to-beat candidate that is just going to be really hard for Mike Lee. He's going to have to work really hard to win against the Democrat that year. So who is the best candidate the Democrats could come up with? Misty Snow, a cross-dresser that has worked for the past year as a cashier at Harmon's. This is the best candidate that the establishment could run against Mike Lee, supposedly. So the opposition against Mike Lee has been a complete professional wrestling, false opposition. Because we look at his record. What's his record as opposed to his talking points? He sponsored a bill giving President Obama unilateral power to create independent independence destroying trade deals. He endorses giving Obama unilateral legislative authority to be able to just veto any line in any bill Congress writes, all by himself. He co-sponsored a new graduated income tax legislation. He also teamed up with Obama to extend the Patriot Act. We got an article about that, it was called the USA Freedom Act. All of the worst parts of the Patriot Act were about to expire. Mike Lee and President Obama teamed up together to extend them to the USA Freedom Act. He then voted he's voted several times, but this is one of the major ones, for the National Defense Authorization Act, meaning that Americans could be detained indefinitely. And he also endorsed Count My Vote by going the signature path, and he voted for warrantless FISA taps in just last year. So he continues to, what his actual record is, as opposed to the rhetoric, is much, much different. And of course, when Jon Huntsman, his former boss, runs for governor, he endorses him. Okay, now let's move on to another tentacle of this Hydra beast, and Skull and Bones. Okay, this is a part of the international part of the conspiracy.